is worthy. Worthy of every song we could ever sing. Worthy of all the praise we could ever bring. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you, oh Jesus. Jesus, the name above every other name.
Okay, folks, come on back, have a seat. I preached here the week before I left for Sweden. I haven't shaved since, so we don't know. We'll see where it goes. Some people think I look old. You didn't shave either. You're joining me with a beard, man. I'll tell you, it's the in thing. Huh? Oh, he's just lazy. Well, I was too. In fact, we had an elders meeting yesterday, and both these guys have, stuff coming out. So, I guess maybe you got to have a beard in order to be an elder here or something like that. I don't know. But you also have to lose your hair, and I might do that real shortly. We'll see. At any rate, with Pastor Ed's homegoing, of course, it's a point I wish I could have been here, but my sister had need of me over there, and just keep them in prayer. They're not doing well. They've given her 2 to 4 months with pancreatic cancer, and the option is extend your life by 1 month with chemo. If they do use that, could extend a month, but of course you have all the side effects with that, so they're just not sure what they're going to do at this point. Or on with us on Facebook, we did a lot with the girls, which is what they want us to do. Spend some time with the girls, kind of take their mind off of what's going on, and be able to just have an enjoyable time. Caleb and Jamie left, and they're over there now. They'll be there for about 4 or 5 days, and so they're going to again try to give some encouragement and do stuff. And I just hate this. I hate this thing. I'm going to go back to the old Clinton mic. This thing's just. The problem is that somebody else uses it and they put it a little differently, and then it doesn't fit my face anymore. So we'll see if that stays on for a bit. Anyway, so just keep them in your prayers. If it flops around, don't worry about it. I'll go best I can on it. So with Pastor Ed's passing, our subjects for our services also got messed up a little bit or changed a little bit. And Pastor Rob actually preached the first part of the next thing we're going to do in John for that week. But then we missed the women or wives in the part of the marriage and family. And we missed the children section. I gave a brief one. So I'm going to go back because Pastor Ed called me actually the day that he passed away. Called me that morning, said, I'm not going to be able to preach tomorrow, not feeling well. And none of us realized that within 8 hours he'd be gone. But I started preparing a sermon, and so I have the notes and so forth. So I just developed that a little bit further. So we're going to talk about children today, marriage and family, because it's so important. And as I really believe, as it says up here, that our greatest legacy of a family is our children. What I leave behind, whether it's money or church or all the other kind of stuff I might do, my greatest legacy is going to be my kids and my grandkids. Then, of course, the future generations. And if you take a look at some of the worst of society, their kids have gone on to be hoodlums in all kinds of destructive ways. And you look at some of the most godly people in society, and it doesn't always work out this way, but some of the Jonathan Edwards, like they look at his down trace, you've got like a bunch of college presidents and pastors and all kinds of other stuff. So the way we bring up our children, the way we interact with our children, and then our grandchildren and so forth, goes down to the next generation. And you don't have to have children in order to say this sermon applies to you, because we also rub off ourselves on other people. So we've got Sunday school, Awana starts today. We've got all other opportunities where we can have influence and impact on children and others. So this sermon is for everybody. I've got 8 points, okay? They're not going to take real long. Most of them are just scripture. And the scriptures, you take your notes out, the scripture verses are listed there so you can go back and take a look at them. I'm going to say very little about each one, but I do have a surprise kind of in the middle of the thing for us, and I have a couple of videos I'd like you to listen to. So let's get started right on as we go through here. Let me just give you a little bit of an overview. Next Sunday is going to be Back to Church Sunday with Model Ballston being here. The following Sunday, we're going to be finishing up the Marriage and Family series with the wives portion, which is the one part we missed going through. And then we're going to go last Sunday, I expect to be Vision Sunday, where we talk about the vision of the church, future of the church. And then when we get to October, we have the church anniversary. What we'll do there, I'm not exactly sure, but sometime in October, we will get back into John and continue to go through the book of John. So that's just kind of what's coming up. This week we're going to do children, and it's important, I think, because, as I say, children are the most important thing we'll leave behind. Too many pastors even neglect the children, spend their time in ministry, and the children wind up, going astray. And we need to realize that it's important for even us as leaders to take that time. When I came here, I won't mention the two elder deacons there, but there were two deacons here. Both of them had struggled with their families. Both of them had dedicated much time to the church, have been involved. And they told me, Pastor Gary, when you come here, we want you to put time in your family. Don't do what we did and put so much time in the church that you lose your family. That is an important part, and I've tried to do that. I don't know if I've been successful, but I've tried to not let one thing completely obliterate the other. And they say PKs can either be really great or really bad. They go one way or the other, it seems like, because of the way ministry takes place. But you need to pray for your pastors. You need to pray for their children, because I'll tell you what, if the Satan can destroy the family of the pastor, he can destroy the pastor too. And the whole thing can go downhill. And he wants to destroy families and churches because those are his two big targets. So let's run through this. First of all, if you're going through your notes, just follow down through. Be thankful. Be thankful. Genesis 9:1, after God destroyed the earth, he said to Noah, God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. The purpose of marriage, one of the purposes of marriage is to have children and fill the earth. Now some say, we've already filled it, so we're fine. Well, I don't know. There's some controversy with that kind of thing, but I want to share one other verse. I often share this when I see a baby and a mom in the hospital. I'd like to see if I can catch them there because it's difficult once they get home to find a convenient time to see them. But Psalm 127, verses 2 and 3, behold, children are a gift of the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior, so are the children of one's youth. How blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. They will not be ashamed when they speak with their enemies in the gate. So if we have our children, we take our children along there. They're what makes parents and grandparents and so forth proud. God doesn't bless everyone with children, and that's a shame. But it doesn't mean you're not blessed if you don't have children. But children, if we have them, are a blessing from God, and we need to look at them that way and be thankful for them. In our church, we do what we call child dedication. It comes from a Hebrew custom they used to do. Samuel, if you remember, his mom, take him to the temple, dedicated him there, and left him there for permanent service to the temple. That was the great prophet Samuel. Jesus Christ was taken to the temple, and as was every other Jewish child, to be circumcised and to be dedicated to God. And so we continue that dedication today by dedicating our children to God. And I'll tell you, that's so important, because when you get to situations like ours with Jonathan or with Joshua and things don't go the way you expect them in life, you have to realize that children are God's. They're not ours. We're stewards of their lives to raise them and bring them up to know God. But they're not ours. We don't own them. God owns them. God owns all of us. So child dedication is important. Some of the issues, contraceptives, the Roman Catholic Church discourages use of contraceptives. They say, be fruitful, multiply the earth. I'm not going to go into detail on that, although we always use natural contraception ourselves, just timing and so forth. I think there is a real plus to the fact that God wants us to have children if we can. I'm not saying we have to have 13 like one of my best friends has, he and his wife, but I just think that sometimes we focus too low. Children are a blessing, and if we can have children and we can raise them, that's great, We had 5, you might say, well, that's expensive, isn't it? Well, it depends. It's not expensive if you as expensive as you might think, because after the second or third one, I mean, you're not paying more insurance, you're just getting a little larger car, you know, and stuff. So there's the food, and I don't recommend paying for the college. So, you know, at any rate, there's some advantages there. But at any rate, I encourage people to have children and have more than they usually think they want to stop at. You know, one's good enough, two's good enough. Well, why not have more? Why not bring someone else into this world that you can raise in the good? And if you can't, or if you want to stop at a certain place, then there's the things of adoption and foster parenting and so forth. One of my friends, the one who has 13 children, actually, Chuck Wilson, Nate, who was here last year, his father, Nate was one of 13. Their son had a drug problem, and he spoke about it at the drug march and wound up passing away, as did his wife eventually. They now have custody of their grandchild, and they're raising the grandchild. And one of the things they found out was that this opioid epidemic we have today is creating almost literally thousands of children who have no parents, because the parents are either addictive, they're in drugs, or they're dead. And so the system has all these babies, and so the system's getting a lot more flexible these days for us to adopt. It used to be you couldn't adopt a child in America. That's why everybody's adopting all around the world, because, you know, parents have parental rights and so forth. But these opioid babies, a lot of times their parents are never going to get them back. And their parents are probably, some of them are going for drug overdoses. And they need homes. And why not we as Christians being able to bring them into our home and raise them and give them the gospel of Jesus Christ and raise them according to the Bible standards? Lots of possibilities open. I'll just read this quick news article about this. The opioid epidemic in Pennsylvania is fueling a crisis in foster care. This is from July 15th, article in the newspaper. Parental drug use, she said, and this is the person that's a foster mom, was a consideration when all three of the children she fostered before adopting them were removed from their birth families. Schellenberger's children are among those known as the hidden victims of the opioid crisis. Children removed from their homes due to substance abuse by one or both parents. About 1 in 3 children who enter foster care are placed as a result of parental substance abuse, and their numbers are growing. So this is a real crisis, and we as the Christian community, who I'm pro-life, you know, we shouldn't be killing our children, but this is a part of that pro-life stance, you know, adopt children, foster children if we're able to as we go down the road. A second thing and this, be thankful. Now we're going to get into some actually parental advice. Expect obedience. Ephesians 6:1 says, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. 1 Timothy 4 and 5, and verse 12, talking to elders and deacons, says this: he must, the elder, be one who manages his own household well, keeping his children under control with all dignity. For if a man does not know how to manage his own household, how will he take care of the church of God? Deacons must be husbands of only one wife and good managers of their children and their own households. So whether we're elders or deacons, they want us to manage our households well, because wives, children, the whole family is important. And so we need to be able to, we should expect obedience from our children. And as far as I'm concerned, they should start when they're infants, you know. And when they're young, you need to teach them. I'm not saying that, you know, if they can't cry, but I'm saying when they start to get to a point of showing their will, if you can't stop them from showing their will at that point in a wrong fashion and say, these are the limits, you're not going to be able to do when they turn 18 or when they turn 16. And a lot of problems we have with kids that are 15, 16, and 18 and not following the rules is they were never taught as children how to follow the rules. And so we need to start immediately with children, right from day one. Children are wired to stretch the rules. They're wired that way. They're wired to see, how far can I go? Am I right? Push the envelope, sure, yeah, you know. And how far will they push it? As far as we let them. And so we need to set those parameters. We need to test. They want to test our boundaries. We need to set those boundaries. And sometimes they love that. I heard about the girl who came home to the father and said, you know, can I date so-and-so? He said, absolutely not. And she went home. She went away totally enthusiastic because she hated the guy, but she didn't want to tell him no. The parental boundaries helped her out. So we need to set those. So expect obedience from your children. Okay, thirdly, teach the word. In Deuteronomy 6:6-9, this is one of the key verses that all of Jewish society is based on. These words which I am commanding you today shall be in your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your sons and daughters, implied, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house and when you walk by the way and when you lie down and when you rise up. You shall bind them as a sign in your hand, and they shall be as frontals on your forehead. You shall write them on the doorpost of your house and on your gates. It is important that we teach our children all the time, not just, Sunday school, go to Sunday school, let church take care of it. It's our responsibility all the time. Every opportunity is a chance to teach our children. Just like Jesus Christ, when he had his disciples walking with him, every time he saw something, it was a chance to teach his disciples, throwing the grain, the shepherd in the sheepfold. Find things in life that can help teach your children and use them every day. In Proverbs 22:6, it says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Daily devotions. Are you teaching them that daily they should be in the Word? And maybe it's just a quick thing. Maybe it's a children's book, or maybe it's the daily bread for ourselves. But do something. And it is harder today than ever before. With our multiple schedules and kids going to all kinds of sports events after school, and they got to be at school so early, and mom and dad are going out to work, it is tough. I understand that. But we need to teach them that it's important to have that daily time to talk to God. Do we have that video, guys? Go ahead with that. I want you to read this, listen to this short video from a mom. This is on Right Now Media, by the way.
I was really blessed to be nurtured and raised by parents who modeled discipleship for me. They were wonderful, godly parents, and I am so grateful for the gift that they gave to me through their lives, through how they laid down their lives, through how they've sacrificed day in, day out for me. And that set such an example for me that I want to pass on to my children. I want to do that for my children too. And there were 3 keys that I really feel like, as a parent, to disciple your children, these are 3 keys to doing that. You need to pray for your children. Prayer is one of the greatest gifts that we can give to our children. I remember my parents, there are 7 children in my family, and so there's 7 days of the week, and so every day of the week was one child's day. And so since I'm second in line, Tuesday is my day. And my parents still to this day, Tuesday is my day. And every Tuesday, they spend special time praying for me. But I remember walking by their room on Tuesday evenings and seeing them kneeling before the bed and praying. And I knew that they were praying for me. That meant so much to me as a child, to see that, to know that my parents cared so much for me, to be pouring out their hearts to God and praying for me. And they prayed for us from the womb, for who we would marry, what God would have us, what was our calling in life, and they just prayed for us. And to this day, I know that many things in my life are results of those prayers, and I want to do the same for my children. And as a busy mom, sometimes I feel like, well, I don't have time to spend hours praying. Even if it's just a few minutes every morning, it can make a big difference. Pour into your children. You've got to sacrifice for them and model what you want them to live. I think a lot of times as moms, we get so frustrated because training is a lot of work, and we forget what the word training actually means. Because you think of an Olympian. Do they just go and just kind of show up and they're this amazing Olympian? No. They have worked and worked and worked and worked and trained. And think about that as what the word training means. It means doing it over and over and over and over again. And as moms, that's what we have to do. We're supposed to train our children. It means we have to do it over and over and over again until we feel like I'm tired and I'm spent and I can't do this anymore. And we have to keep going. Pour into your children. You will reap the rewards. And praise your children. I think this is something as a parent that's hard to do because we feel like we're called to be our child's Holy Spirit. But really, we need to praise them 10 times as much as we criticize them. And look for the good. If you've told your child to clean their room, don't go in there and nitpick the 5 things that are wrong. Look for 2 things at least that are good and praise them for that, because that is going to give your children so much encouragement, and that is going to make them want to excel because you're praising them. So pray for your children, pour into your children, and praise your children.
Did you pick the 3 P's out? Pray, pour into them, and praise them. Make a good sermon, huh? At any rate, it's important to do that, and I just thought from a mom's mouth it was good to hear. That's Right Now Media, by the way. If you are not on Right Now Media, send me an email. I'll give you an invitation. There's all kinds of lessons, teachings, finances, family, marriage, kids, work, leadership. I mean, there's all kinds of resources there, and it's free to you because we pay for it as part of the church so you can have it. 4, discipline without anger. You need to come to the place where there needs to be discipline in the home, but you also need to do it without anger. There are 5 verses I'd like to point out here. Proverbs 13:24. He who withholds his rod hates his son, but he who loves him disciplines him diligently. Proverbs 22:15. Foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child. The rod of discipline will be moved far from him. Proverbs 23:13-15. Do not hold back discipline from the child. Although you strike him with a rod, he will not die. You shall strike him with a rod and rescue his soul from Sheol, or from hell. My son, if your heart is wise, my own heart also will be glad. And then lastly, Hebrews 12:11. All discipline for the moment seems not to be joyful or pleasant, but sorrowful. Yet to those who have been trained by it, afterward it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness. By the way, if you young people here, I mean, this is training you for when you eventually get your own children. So I mean, this is applicable for all of us. But some people say, "Oh, don't spank your children." I'm not, I'm not of that camp. I'll be honest with you. Okay. Now I'm not saying you beat the kids and spank them every single day, but they need to know the parameters. And if they won't listen to a certain point, a spanking can say, "You don't want to go beyond this parameter again." Sometimes we're just too lax. We're not consistent enough, and we just keep on going. And they keep pushing buttons. And, if we are consistent and say, this is the end, and this is what's going to happen, they won't want to have that experience again, They're not going to keep on doing it so you spank them every single day, But you got to start early. Because if they know that they can push you, and pretty soon it's just, look, I'll just let you go. I'm too frustrated. It'll go. And I've swatted my grandkids each, Not real bad, but they weren't obeying. One swat, didn't know you do that. And you'll see the attitude change, And it doesn't have to be hard, but you need to have that discipline. And if it winds up being a spanking, you need to do that. And don't wait till they're 17, because it won't work when they're 17. You need to do it when they're 2 or 5 or 8 or whatever the time is, so they know this is the parameter. Do not push it, okay? Count to 10, but also don't do it in anger. You make me mad. And then, no, you don't. Count to 10. Send them to the room, let you cool down, and then bring them down, talk to them, and do whatever discipline is there. Don't do it when you're angry, but still be fair and firm. Number 5, be consistent. Ephesians 6:4 says, Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. It's important as fathers we take the lead on this. We need to have a standard, and we need to back up our wives, okay? Wives, also, it shouldn't be, wait till your dad comes home all the time, We can't make him the bad guy. We have certain parameters, but you know what? They better not disobey your wife. If they do, they're going to be in double trouble, okay? They got to know that her authority is the same as your authority. And you got to be able, but it says, don't provoke them, children to wrath. And I think we can provoke children to wrath if we discipline in anger. If we're not consistent, we get mad one time, and then the other time we let them go with it. We've got to be consistent so that this is the standard. And they will live to that standard through life. 6th, provide for them. 1 Timothy 5:8 says, if anyone does not provide for their own, and especially for those of his own household, and here's talking about the widows, even beyond your own children and family, he is denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever, or in the King James, infidel. You got to provide for them, We got to work hard. We got to provide the financial security that they need. We got to provide just the general security that we have somebody, that there's parents that love each other. The best thing you can do to help kids feel safe is not to give them money and all this other kind of stuff. It's for you to love your wife and the wife to love the husband. Wife, respect your husband. Husband, love your wife, and the children will feel safe. If they know they can play mom against dad or dad against mom, and they will do that, they will do that. They'll try to get away with it. They need to know that we're consistent and that fathers will provide for their children. 2 Thessalonians 3:10, it says, but even when we were with you, we used to give you this order. If anyone is not willing to work, then he shall not eat either. So when I say we're supposed to provide for them, that doesn't mean give them everything, okay? It means work. Teach them a work ethic. They have chores to do at home. We had a chore chart. 5 kids, it was hard to have, but we had a chore chart. They didn't do their chores. And we expected that. And we didn't pay them for it either. You know, that's part of living in this house. You know, taking out the trash, that's what you do. You know, that's your job. If it's washing the dishes, that's your job. I don't do that because you get free board here. And our rule was in our family, when they finished school, if they were no longer in school, they paid rent. And if they are still in school, we'll take care of them. But once they got out, they pay rent if they're staying at the home. In fact, Joshua pays rent. Okay? He pays $1,000 a month, but he pays rent because he's a working guy now, right? Works at McDonald's. Probably has more money than we do. But he pays rent, and he also buys his own food, and he also buys some of our food. Now, the responsibility. The same thing for anybody else that's going to be, once they're out doing their job, they contribute to the household. I think it's wrong. I shouldn't say it's wrong. I think it's foolish, too strong of a word. Maybe get rid of it. We did not promise our kids to pay for their college, okay? And they'll give us Caleb says, man, Dad, so-and-so's father's paying for his whole bill. How come you're not, you know? Well, I told him since there's little, I used kind of the excuse, and it was the reason that, you know, as a pastor, we've made less than what most people make in our regular jobs. Lois is a stay-at-home mom. We homeschooled. So I said, do not expect us to pay for college. And they knew that from sowing us, you know? But they all found a way. You know, Carissa entered the military. Caleb got scholarships as a professional athlete. Jonathan, he said, I'll take out loans. And, you know, with his brains, he would have made more his first year than me, probably in my 30th year. You know, things didn't go the way he wanted them. Had to deal with that. But they found ways to do it. Jamie, she went to Bucks County Community College for 2 years before then going on, so she could pay her own way and went to third and fourth years without the school. They can find ways, and they will appreciate more if they do it. That doesn't mean I didn't contribute some. I did. I contributed all of them, some, but it was not planned. I know parents who have gone out working second, third jobs to try to put their kids through college, and it's not only killed the family, killed the parents, but it's also taught the kids that, hey, you can get a free ride, you know? And they don't deserve a free ride. They need to learn for themselves. We help them out. But don't feel like you got to give them everything. Now we're going to take a risk, okay? Because I've asked Carissa to come up and talk and tell you anything she wants, okay? So she may emphasize or she may say, I'm the worst father there ever was or whatever, but she may do anything she wants this morning because I think it's important to hear from the kids. You know, I mean, how did things work? And I wasn't always perfect or right. I don't know if you're planning on telling the story about Jonathan and Caleb's little dispute in the back porch there on the run, but yeah, I think that was a pretty, but anyway, be creative in your discipline, okay? Carissa? You get to correct me or something.
Yeah, imagine that. He's coming back up after I talk. So as a PK, you kind of get used to being the illustration your entire life. Like, you're just going to be talked about from the pulpit from the moment you come out of your mother. Well, today I'm the living illustration. So I'm going to talk about some of the things that Dad went through and give either my rebuttals or comments or, you know, whatever. So I did get a chance, because this was supposed to happen earlier, Jamie and I had talked about it, so one or two of the things is actually from her. But I'll go through Dad's actual outline to give some of them. So be thankful. That one was kind of obvious. We've always known that Dad has told us, I guess, from birth too, that you are a legacy. And so, you know, we've always known that he was thankful. So there's not a whole ton to say on that one. Expect obedience, but obedience and discipline, let's get started. Expected obedience. Sorry, I always shake. I'm not nervous, but I will shake. It's just the way I do it. I don't know why. So prior to stretch them. So rules are meant for safety. And as a kid, we don't always realize that. Like, we hated the rules. We weren't allowed to sleep over at anyone's house until we were 16, at which point I was like, well, that's awesome, because I don't care about it anymore. Thanks a lot. But we weren't allowed to do it. As I got older, now that I have my own daughter, I'm like, guess what? That parent rule? Yeah, that's coming back. You ain't sleeping over at anybody's house. You're at my house all the time. Different world sometimes, but that's definitely a rule that Kenzie's going to follow as well, because it meant safety. There was another rule that actually Dad's illustration, he said about the girl, that was actually me, not that specific one, but I didn't want to date. I thought it was stupid to date in high school. I thought, you people are going out, you're getting in dates, you're getting in trouble, and then you're in tears for months. For what? You're leaving the guy anyway when you go to college. What is your problem, people? So I did not want to date, but I got asked out on dates, or I would get asked out, hey, you want to do this, you want to do that, and I was like, no, but my parents won't let me, sorry. And that was the end of the conversation. And I knew that if my parents had told me, if you ever get in a situation that you want to say no to, feel free to blame it on us at any point in time. We will take that blame gladly. I had no problem with that. Yep, it's my parents' fault. There's nothing I can do. Sorry, yeah, they're really strict, I know. My mother very proudly wore the title of second, she was actually not the first, second strictest mother in the homeschool group. You didn't do anything without my mom knowing. But she wore that title proudly, and we joked about it, but we appreciated the fact that we knew we were safe in those rules. One of the rules that we had, not all parents' rules make sense. So one of the rules my parents had was we weren't allowed to go to theaters. So when I hit 18, that was my birthday present to myself, was I took myself to a theater, because I thought it was a really dumb rule. When my siblings hit 18, I took all of them to the theater too. That was their birthday present that year. But it was a consistent rule, and we knew that it was a rule. So it was really special when we did, for some strange reason, break the rule. Dad talked about being consistent later on, but one of the times that I broke the rules, I don't even think he knew about it till it happened after, was there was a birthday party, and they were going to see Beauty and the Beast. I know, scandalous movie, but I really wanted to go. And it was my best friend's birthday, and my mom said, okay, it is a birthday party, so you can go just because of that. So it was cool to break the rules. Which helped us to know the rules aren't here because we want to be so strict and legal on you that you can't have any fun. They're here for your safety. They're here because we love you. So it made it easier, at least for me, not always my siblings, to follow the rules because I knew it came from a place of love, not a place of punishment. The teaching the word. You can teach all you want. You can talk to kids all you want. I do it all the time. But if you're not showing it and you're not doing it, it doesn't matter what you tell us. Because kids have an innate ability in their minds to see when you're pulling crap. We know it. There's no way you're going to get away with it. So just to teach me the Bible verses didn't really teach me anything. But to see my parents living those Bible verses, well, that made a big difference because it meant they actually believed them, and they wanted me to believe them too. So a lot of my dad and Jamie and I were talking about this. When they get to college, a lot of kids fall away from the faith. And they were asking the question, well, why? Well, I think some of the why comes from the fact that they may have been taught, but maybe their parents just dropped them off at church and said, yeah, you're going to Sunday school, goodbye, now I'm going to home. Or that's all it was. It was just on Sundays. But in the home, it wasn't consistent. It didn't make a difference when they got home. All it was just someplace they had to be on Sunday. Well, you don't want to go. If you're going to just be trapped there on a Sunday morning, that's all it is. It's a trap. It's not a life. It's not a relationship. So why bother the rest of the week? So my parents, one of the things we had to do was we had to serve. And so even at youth group, my parents, when we first came here, there was no youth leader. My parents were youth group leaders. So guess who got to go to Six Flags when they were really young? Because there was no one else to take the youth group. I went to Six Flags. But it taught me that you can serve no matter where, and you can always serve. And there are places that even as a little kid, we were in the back helping to set up chairs. We could do that. We were perfectly capable of that. I could take my kids, when I do social, you'll notice, my little one, both of them actually, are very proudly carrying their plate out to put it on the table because they're helping to serve. They're learning it now, that I don't just teach them that the Bible says to serve, but I'm showing them that we serve as well, which is something that my parents taught me. Discipline without anger. So, yeah, my dad believes in spanking. I actually do too. But I have to tell you that there's a difference between when you're disciplined without anger and using a different type of rod. It's not, and I want to clarify too, discipline, not punishment. So punishment is like when you're punishing them for something they did wrong. Discipline is when you're correcting them with love. And my parents never punished me. They corrected me with love. My daughter at 2 could say, I hate conquest, Mommy. I hate consequence. I hate consequences. Because she knew what good or bad, there are consequences. If you want good consequences, you do the right thing. You get bad consequences when you don't. But it was always in love that we were punished. So even if I knew if I did the worst thing, which for a Christian girl growing up, the worst thing you're probably going to do is get pregnant, right? It's probably about the worst you're going to do. And we would always joke, my sister and I, if you get pregnant, Dad's going to kill you. Like, he's going to murder you. Don't get pregnant. But the reality was we both knew if either one of us did get pregnant, we were still going home. because we knew we had the love there. So yeah, they were going to be disappointed, they were going to be upset, and they were probably going to correct us quite a bit, but they were still going to love us, and they would still take us home. And so there was never the thought that the punishment was because came out of a place, or the discipline came out of any other place than love. But as I said, a different rod. So the two punishments that I distinctly remember, neither one of them was a spanking. And both of them could have started out, my parents both started out in a place very much of anger and frustration with me, and they found a different way to punish me. So the first one was, I had a mouth when I was younger, and I backtalked all the time. I didn't like doing anything else. I wouldn't act out in any other way. It didn't hit, whatever. I backtalked. And my dad, for the life of him, could not get me to stop backtalking to my mother. I didn't do it to him, I don't think. But I backtalked to my mom all the time. So at one point, he got so frustrated with me and was so mad at me that he was like, all right, that's it. I've had it. Nothing I do corrects this. Sit down. So I sat. He was like, here's the Bible. Here's the concordance. Every single verse that has tongue in the word, you underline it, you write it out. It's every word, every time. Go. Don't move till it's done. You know how many times tongue's in the Bible? It's a lot. And I still remember that the tongue's a very powerful rudder for that big ship. It's a punishment I have never forgotten. And I use that example all the time when people ask me about punishment, because it's one I remember. I know he started out at a place of frustration. But I got a punishment that I'll never forget. And I've used it and you probably end up using it with my kid. Because it taught me that, it showed me how the Bible said that it was wrong to backtalk to my mom. It showed me how powerful the tongue really could be. It showed me different things than just spanking me, because obviously spanking hadn't done diddly squat yet. So just a different form of punishment that made a big difference to me than anything else had impacted me. The other time that I had done it was, the rest of these illustrations will prove this. My brother Caleb did not get along with I know you all think he's an angel. Newsflash, he's not. He was horrible growing up. We hated his guts. We love him now, but growing up, if there was a problem, he was involved in it. And I couldn't stand it. Now, in all fairness to Caleb, apparently there's this middle child syndrome. I don't know, you guys have this middle child thing? Yeah. So apparently this is a thing. I don't know. But not only was he middle child, he also had the unfortunate problem of coming after Jonathan, who could do no wrong. There was nothing wrong that Jonathan could ever do. So Jonathan could come by and poke me or hit me or whatever and walk away, and I don't care, it's Jonathan. Caleb could come by and poke me or hit me or whatever, and I was turning around and land him flat on the ground. Like, it was going to be real quick. So my mom got frustrated. It was like, I don't know what to do. You do not understand. You cannot kill your brother. So she said, okay, since you don't understand that this is a punishment that you need to accept, I'm going to take your punishment for you. What? You're going to spank me. I'm going to what? No, I'm not. Yes, you are. You're going to spank me and tell me why you should not be hurting your brother. I never did end up spanking her, but I'll tell you what, I was in tears for quite a while. And now, I don't know that with either of those two punishments, I'm pretty sure that was not the end of the line. I know Caleb and I didn't get along after that either. But it did make me see Caleb in a completely different light, and it did force me to go, yeah, you know what, maybe I do actually treat Caleb different than Jonathan, and not because it's Caleb that's doing it. So just two different ways. Now, I don't necessarily recommend that you have your children try to spank you. Some of them might gleefully do it. But my attitude was, I can't physically watch my mother. She got down on her hands and knees and put her hands on the bed as if, assumed the position type thing. And there was just no way I was hitting my mother. Probably in the back of my mind was the fact that his dad finds out about this, I'm never leaving my room again. So just two different ways to punish. The other two that we had both involved Caleb. Gee, wonder why. So we were in the back of the house, and there was dinner time, and this actually happened more than once. Caleb did something, who knows what, it was Caleb, and had to run around the house, because at our house, you could actually run around the entire house. So he had to run around the whole house. Well, then Jonathan, I guess, decided that, thought this was funny, so he ends up having to run around the opposite side of the house. So they're both running around the house, and we thought it was hysterical. Now, they stopped doing whatever they're doing. Found out later, Jamie said they'd get to the other side of the house where Dad couldn't see him and smack each other before they'd continue the ride around. I'm not sure how effective that one was. Another one that probably wasn't effective was Jamie says that, and I'm sure Caleb will deny it, but Jamie says, Mom, because the two of them didn't get along, she would have them hold hands, and sit there until they could get along. Well, Caleb would take his sister's hand and squeeze as hard as he could and then whisper, "You can't tell Mom, or you'll get in trouble again. You can't tell Mom." What was Jamie supposed to do? So she'd stay quiet. So Caleb would torture her for the whole punishment, and then they'd both get up and go on their way. Maybe not the best idea. You might want to find a different route for that one. But that was the punishment aspects. But they were consistent. Well, those punishments weren't. They were creative punishments, but they were consistently done in such a way that, it was for the same thing that we had problems with. But being consistent, I actually want to talk about something different than what Dad did as far as punishment goes. The second part of the verse he read said, "Be consistent in your instructions in the Lord." And this didn't happen in our house, but Mark Larry tells the joke that if they were sick, you had to prove you were sick in order to not go to church. So you had to throw up. And then if you threw up, his mom would go, "Now don't you feel better? Let's go to church." That's pretty much how it worked in my house. You were in church every single day, period. There was no way around church. Well, that meant that when you were on vacation, you were in church, period. There was no way around church. We've gone to some interesting churches. We were, I think one of the few that I really distinctly remember was an Episcopalian church, which is interesting to see the differences in the traditions and stuff. But it was a consistent thing. So it wasn't just the kids are going to church. When you go off to college, hey, you might want to go to church. It's you go to church. You're worshiping God. You go to church. And to do that, it's not just the building, it's the people and the worship. And so that is part of being consistent, is to always go to church no matter where you are in life. And so that was one of the things. The other thing that was consistent, speaking rule-wise, was you probably noticed I am never in a dress, like ever, or a skirt. If I am, it's probably Mother's Day, Father's Day, or a special holiday. So when I was younger, we weren't allowed to. Now it's different. Like there's Eagles T-shirts all over the place. Well, that's just a given because of the today. But T-shirts, that kind of thing, shorts, pants, that was not acceptable back then, especially not in my family. So I found a way around it, and my father insisted, "You will be in church in a dress." So this was an argument every single Sunday morning in my house. I was probably the last one out of the house because I was still arguing about wearing a dress. I would pack a backpack. And the second service was out, I was in the library changing because service was over, so I was okay. So this was my dad's compromise. He never actually commented on the fact that I was changing as soon as church is over, because technically I followed the rule. I was consistent. I was nice in church. But it was Dad's way of telling us is that you're going to worship God. You're worshiping God in every part of your body. So you can worship God through the way you dress as well. And you can dress nicely for Him. To worship, as part of your worship to Him, is the way you're dressing. So T-shirts, maybe not technically the most appropriate thing. So today we wear stuff like this. My sister, but I try and stay away, like, okay, look, it doesn't have to be a graphic T-shirt. You don't need a symbol of, you're not walking in wearing Batman. I love Batman, but Batman's staying home, go change. Put Spider-Man away, Kenzie. No, you're not wearing that to church. You will wear something different. I still hold that rule somewhat. It's just not on, I'm still not in dresses. And then finally providing, so my version of this is my dad, when we were born, he all said, we heard three things. I love you, you are going to be my legacy, and you will pay your own way through college. Those are the three things that he said to us the moment we were born. We all knew that sucker. We were provided for, but we were going to learn financial stability ourselves, and we were going to pay our own way through college. So our family, one of the things we figured out for consistency was, especially when Dad was deployed, we instituted a family night. Every Friday night was family night, always, period. There was no way around it. And that just helped us to feel closer when we were feeling spread apart and away from each other. It was a way to say we are consistent together. And to provide that loving atmosphere for us was to have a consistent family night. So at my house, we still do family night. We do date night once or twice a week, but or every other week, but family night is every single week. Providing for Kenzie has no idea, and I'm sure most of us at this point could say they have no idea what it was like to live as our parents as far as financial. Like, Kenzie thinks she should be at Burger King every single week. She's not, but she thinks she should be. For our family, because we were poor, we got to go to Burger King one time a year, and it was when we finished our reading book. So for homeschooling, our reading book was about that thick. It took us about the whole year to get through it. And we would go to finish, that was our special thing, was going out with Mom to Burger King or McDonald's because we had finished our reading book. That made, we knew we were provided for, we knew we were reading from, but it made that one thing so much more special because we had done something to deserve it as well. And the last thing that I had was providing for them was, yes, we did have to work. We were quoted that eat and work. In fact, I think I quoted that to Kenzie yesterday. Verse from birth as well. But the funny thing was with that is that Dad would always, Mom was a little more relaxed in the rules on that. Dad was not. And so when we would come home, Dad came home from deployment, or from AT, which is 2 weeks in the summer every single year. Every single year, my family, the siblings and I would get together in my room and go, look, Dad's back. The list is back on the door. He would have us sign these stupid contracts. You will be up by 7:30. You will have your beds made by 8. You will be down for breakfast by 8:15. You will have started school by 9 o'clock. 2 weeks, guys. We only have to survive this for 2 weeks. Dad'll be done with his militaristic stuff, and we can go back to doing however the heck we want it with Mom. 2 weeks, and we'll get through. Sure enough, every single year, 2 weeks later, the note would come off the door, and we'd go back to doing things the way they were before. But those contracts were always a hysterical thing for us going around. You do have to be careful with them, though, because I know one of the things that we did once was there was a note on the door that we weren't allowed to go into my parents' room. My dad was getting tired of us constantly in the bedroom, Mom too. And so there was a note on the door we weren't allowed to go into the bedroom anymore, which was fine, except that the note didn't mention anything about night. And normally when you have a nightmare, you could go into Mommy. I had a nightmare, and the note was on the door. And I was one of those kids, if there was a rule, I was going to follow the rule. But I was scared, so I didn't know what to do. So I camped myself in front of the door for a good, now in my mind, in my 9-year-old mind, it was probably like 2-3 hours. In reality, it was probably like 15, 20 minutes. But I laid down in front of the door because I couldn't go back to bed and I couldn't get into my Mommy because the rules said I couldn't go into Mommy at night. I couldn't go in the room. So I camped down and laid in front of the door, and finally I was so exhausted, I was freezing, and I finally went back and went to bed. I must have told my Mom about it because the next day that note was gone and it never reappeared. Now the contracts came back. We still had to get up at 8 a.m. and whatever. But the rule of not going in there was gone. Why? Oh, because we knew Mom loved us, and it was the consistency, it was that consistency, the discipline, but also always with the form of love. You know, we never ever doubted that what our parents were doing for us was through love. We might not agree, movies, but we understood that it was coming from a place where they were trying to protect us, and if they could give an exception to us, they would out of a place of love. The biggest one exception I can think of for that being we weren't allowed to do anything on Sundays because it was a day off, and we loved that. It was nice, but Jonathan had baseball. And there was one time that they let him do a game because it was an all-star championship game. And so for Jonathan, that meant the world to him because, yes, they were consistent, but they were consistent in love and knew, hey, this is a big enough deal that we're going to tell you it's okay this time, and you can go do that game. And I don't even know if they won that game, but it was a big deal for him to be able to do it and to love it. So yeah, those are kind of my, not really rebuttals, but more like all my examples for all the previous things that Dad has come up with. So hopefully they helped out a little bit to see how it worked out in the real life aspects of a pastor's kid.
Well, I survived it. You know, as you think, the thing with Jonathan, I will say, you know, you have rules, but you understand the rules are not there just as rules, but they're not legalistic. Sometimes we get legalistic about it. We need to have the principles behind them. For instance, and Kristen mentioned this, maybe she didn't even know it. The reason we allowed Jonathan to play that one game, and he never played on Sundays, was because he happened to be everything he did was great. He was the all-star first baseman. It was the all-star playoffs. And we actually let him play that game because without the game, and I don't know if they won or lost, the coach was a kind of a weird coach that year. He had his own son who played first base, and so I don't know how things worked out. But we let him play because as a testimony to Jesus Christ, we didn't want them to lose the game and base it on the fact that their first baseman, their all-star first baseman wasn't there because it was a Sunday. So we felt in that case it was more of a testimony to the people in the community to be able to allow him to play instead of having them be mad and upset about some rule that they didn't understand. So, the rules aren't there for the rules' sake. The rules are there in order to try to give guidance, and they can be adjusted as need be, or exceptions. I have two things, and then we're going to, guys, why don't you come on up if you want. There's two more things that I want to mention. First of all, number 7, be active in Christ's body. Hebrews 10:25 says, not forsaking your own assembling of themselves together, as has become the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. You have kids that say, oh, I don't go to church anymore because my parents made me go to church. Well, I got 5 kids, 3 of them still active around, and they go to church, and they're very active. And, I think that's hogwash. I think it's an excuse. I think parents who say, well, you don't have to go to church because we don't want, it's going to force you to do that. I think an example is really great. If you were on our Facebook page, my Facebook page, you'll notice that the 2 weeks we were in Sweden, Lois and I both went to church. First week, it was a Pentecostal church, the only church we knew in the area, in Luleå. It wasn't Swedish, but we still went. And we talked to them, and they provided somebody who gave Lois at least a little bit of an interpretation. They had a little kid running around. He must have run around the church 100 times during the service. That was the way they did, but a different kind of service, but we went to church. The following week, we went to a Lutheran church, which was their state church. Was 500 years old, Catholic originally, then Lutheran, and a woman vicar, and so forth, but we went to that church. And one of our friends went, actually that time, they weren't going to, but they went with us and they translated. So for us, the habit was to be in the church because we feel that's what God wants us to do. And we told the kids, we made sure they knew, you're in church not because you're the preacher's kid. You're in church because you're the tailor's kid. This is not a fact that I'm a pastor. This is the fact of our personal, as a family, our personal example that we're going to do for us and that we're going to function as. Lastly, be an example, and that's it. 1 Timothy 4:12. Let no one look down on your youthfulness, but rather in speech and conduct, love, faith, and purity. Show yourself to be an example of those who believe. In other words, do as I do, not as I say. Be that example because the kids will see through you, and I think Carissa mentioned that. We're not going to do the last video, guys, but if you put on that the last theme, here's the theme as we close this morning. It's children are a stewardship gift from God. Treat them that way. Guys?